I can't think of a better person to turn this evening over to than Lisa Page. She is not only a former president of the Faulkner Foundation, she is a professor, she is herself a published author in all different kinds of journals and organizations. So Lisa, I'll let you introduce the vibrant, talented artist, author, hip-hop musician, and, I don't know, generally nice guy.
Can you hear me now? Is that working? Yeah. Great. Okay. Thanks so much for that introduction, Diana. And thanks to Hill Center for partnering with the Faulkner Foundation. We are committed to showcasing outstanding contemporary literature, and tonight we begin our second season at Hill Center. We are so grateful to be part of this programming. As you may know, Faulkner offices are housed here. Like Hill Center, Faulkner is acutely aware of the role of the arts in the larger community. Our Writers in Schools programs bring writers to public schools and correctional facilities in Washington, D.C. and Baltimore, Maryland. We understand the power of outreach and are expending our efforts nationally. I'd also like to thank Emma Snyder, our executive director, and Nate Brown, our deputy director, who are doing outstanding work. Their commitment to this programming has been an important new direction for Faulkner. And I'd also like to thank Marianne Brownlow for her excellent coordination of these events. Tonight we have MK Asante in the house. Mr. Asante is an award-winning author, filmmaker, hip-hop artist, and professor. He too understands the power of the written word to change lives. His essays have appeared in the New York Times and USA Today. His new memoir, Buck, is a coming-of-age story about his life in Philadelphia, or as he says, Killadelphia, in the 1990s. This memoir is by turns lyrical, brutal, intellectual, and original. It is a story about the streets, a story about family, a story about redemption. And song lyrics are sprinkled throughout. You will hear quotes from Common, Nas, Jay-Z, and others. Asante delivers a rhythm to the narrative like a heartbeat pumping blood through these pages. And according to Twitter feed from writer Maya Angelou, Buck is a story of surviving and thriving with passion, compassion, wit, and style. Please welcome MK Asante.
Thanks, everybody. Oh, mic is really on now. Hey, what's up, everybody? Good to be here. Thanks to everybody, Hill Center, Faulkner, everybody who made this happen. Politics and Prose. So yeah, thank you, and thank you, Lisa.
And thank you so much for coming out, especially given the events of yesterday. It's
Definitely.
So nice to have all of you here.
Definitely, yeah.
So I'd like to open this with, I know you said that this memoir was a book about education. And yet, education sometimes seemed to get in your way. So I was hoping that you would talk about that.
Yeah, well, school got in my way, not education. And that's different. I think this book is about education. It's about miseducation. It's about re-education. It's about self-education. It's about street education. And it's about the difference and the distance between school and education. And so, for me, education, I believe that the world is a university, and that's kind of what I learned in this book. My teachers came from all walks of life, you know what I mean? They didn't look like teachers most of the time, They were on the corner, they were in the barbershop, they were on the streets, there was a guy on the street one day, a homeless man, who told me, he said, "Do you know what soul is, young man?" And I was, out there in the streets, and I said, "Soul Train?" He said, "Nah, soul is the graceful survival against impossible circumstances." That's a teacher. You know what I mean? He taught me something, and there was so many gems that I got. So for me, education isn't really about school. It can happen in school if you're lucky, but, it happens everywhere. And so to me, yeah, the book is about education, but it's about an unconventional education,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
And the written word was always important to you, even though you came to it a little later, because as I mentioned, these song lyrics are throughout the book.
Yeah, well, you know, every black kid that I know, and not even black kids, little white kids, if you're from the city, not even in the city anymore, mostly every young person has hip-hop Tourette's. You know what I mean? You know what hip-hop Tourette's is? When I was walking up wherever I was walking just a minute ago, I had the song in my head and it just comes out. The bars just come out of me. I explained it in the book. Maybe because it's in the opening, so I'll read from the opening. I've got a quote from Ovid as the epigraph. It says, "Be patient and tough. Someday this pain will be useful to you." That's the opening quote. Okay, so this is the opening of the book. Chapter 1, The Fall. Each chapter has a different name. The fall in Killadelphia. Outside is the color of cornbread and blood. Change hangs in the air like the sneaks on the live wires behind my crib. Me and my big brother Uzi in the kitchen. He's rolling a blunt on top of the source. The one with Tyson on the cover, rocking a kufi, ice grilling through the gloss. Uzi can roll a blunt with his eyes closed. He cracks, splits, busts. The rawest crews in Philly are all 3 letters, he tells me. I read the cover through the tobacco guts and weed flakes. The rebirth of Mike Tyson. I'm not good, I'm not bad, I'm just trying to survive in this world. Awaken crews in a rude fashion, on the ass like Mike Tyson at a beauty pageant. That's one of the lyrics that we're talking about that are sprinkled throughout the book. So there's a random hip-hop lyric that just, bam, in the center of the book. And then I explain it. I do this. I spit lyrics to songs under my breath all day, every day. The bars just jump out of me, no matter where I am or what I'm doing. It's like hip-hop Tourette's. So that's how I describe it. And like I said, every kid I know, even grown men, I'm sure some of y'all got hip-hop Tourette's, right? You're walking out and you just, no matter where you are, what you're doing, there's a soundtrack that's playing in your head. You know, hip-hop is kind of like a heartbeat, and it's a soundtrack to this story. It's been the soundtrack to my life probably. So so that's a very real experience. So words and language and wordplay, you know, hip-hop exposed us to metaphors and similes and double entendres and all this stuff when we didn't even know what that was. You know what I mean? We didn't understand the official terminology for it, but we understood he just used the same word to mean 3 different things. You know what I mean? And that was cool. But we didn't get, later on you learn the technical terms. But, you know, so hip-hop exposed me early to language and things like that.
And the book opens up with you and your brother, as you just read, Uzi, who you worship at the beginning of this. You're 14, you're in Philadelphia, he's your God. You run with him, you run with his friends, and the world looks good until what happens?
Yeah, well, let me just introduce Uzi a little bit. Uzi is the color of walnuts and has a long, sharp face like the African mask my dad hangs up everywhere. His name is Daoud. My parents call him Daoudi, and the hood calls him Uzi. He's got a bunch of other names too, like some superhero. Uwap, Daoud, Uzito, Wap the Culture, Cool D, Pinch P, Big Oo, Barker Lark, Drop the Miss Rhyme, Big Fly, and Stilt the Kilt. So my brother's friend comes to the crib. He knocks on the window, and he tells my brother, this is in the opening chapter, he tells my brother, yo man, we got a Johnny. A Johnny in Philly is a stolen car. Right? My brother is like 17 at the time, thinks it's a great idea. So he's like, let's go. I'm like 13 at the time. I think it's a great idea. I'm like, let's go. My brother's like, no, you can't go. Right? And kind of prevents me from going. But one of the things that I talk about is just kind of how I always follow my brother. So I'm going to read you a little bit from that scene. And this is how it always goes. Me following Uzi in everything, everywhere, like his little black JanSport, covered in Marks-a-Lot, strapped tight to his back, koala style. Anywhere, any place, he does it, I do it. He tries it, fuck it, I'm trying it. He can't shit, why can't I? Sometimes I even duck like Uzi under doorways, even though he's way taller and I don't need to duck. I follow Uzi to sweaty Badlands house parties that always end in crazy shirtless rumbles with everybody howling, North side, in the middle of the street. To Broad and Rockland to cop dime bags from one of the dusty bodegas with nothing but baking soda and expired Bisquick on the shelves. To freestyle ciphers on South Street that the nut-ass police always break up for no reason. To crack on Johns getting off the L at 69th Street like, yo, shorty, let me holler at you for a minute. To scale the fence to watch Sad Eye, the Jordan of street ball, hoop at 16th and Susquehanna. To skate the ledges and steps at Love Park until we get chased away by the cops. To bomb the Orange Line subway with Sharpies and kiwi polish sticks. And now, to joyride through Philly in a stolen wheel. Being with Uzi makes me feel invincible, like nothing bad can happen to us, like nothing and nobody can hurt us. I feel unfuckwittable. So that's Uzi. And basically in that opening chapter, my brother gets locked up. They get into the Johnny. They run toward the car, jailbreak joyful. 10 minutes later, come running back in the house with like 20 cops chasing them. The cops bust down. I'm laughing about it now. It wasn't funny back then. Cops come raid our house, like 20 cops, bust down the door. They lock my brother up. And that's really like the beginning of the end in a lot of ways. It's the beginning of my family. I mean, it's the end of my family as I knew it, you know. That moment changes everything in terms of my brother, my mom, and my dad, and me, of course. So that was kind of the, that would be the moment where I would call it almost like a loss of innocence in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so we have some background. Your mother was a former dancer. Your father is still a professor of African studies. Yeah. And their marriage also crumbles, yes, in the wake of Uzi going to, well, first they send Uzi away to Arizona. And
yeah. Yeah, they send my brother, when people are getting in trouble, people have this notion that, oh, you're getting in trouble? Let's send you somewhere else where things don't happen, where there's no drugs and there's no violence. So they end up sending him to Arizona to live with my uncle, who called me today, and I was nervous because my uncle is he's a recovering drug addict. And he was, he had been clean like a month when they sent my brother out there to live with him. He does what they call dynamite, which is heroin and crack mixed up. So they sent my brother to live with my uncle, who was, just getting off drugs, and he wasn't really stable. And anyway, but he called me today. He loves the book. He loves the book. I was a little nervous because he called me. He's like, I read the book. I was like, oh yeah, because I was honest about everybody in the book, and he's like, man, I really love it, and he's like, told the truth, So, but my brother gets in trouble immediately in Arizona. As you guys know, trouble, it's everywhere. You know what I mean? You can go, there's nowhere where those things don't exist. And, my brother ends up getting arrested in Arizona, but this is like a much more serious, the stolen car thing. It was, that wasn't really a big deal. When he gets arrested in Arizona, they try to charge him as an adult. Actually, they do charge him as an adult. He's an adult. And it's for statutory rape of a white girl in Arizona. You know what I mean? That's the wrong place if you're a brother to be getting in that kind of trouble. So he, ended up doing jail time there. And that was my parents had really different views on how to deal with that. My dad's whole thing was he wants the thug life. Like, he made his bed, let him lay in it. Like, I don't got no bail money. Like, that's it. My dad's just very, my dad comes from, he's one of 16 children. And he comes from a small town near Valdosta, Georgia. He grew up in a shack, like way smaller than this room. Probably like, I guess, I don't know, a fifth of this room. And he doesn't have time for that kind of stuff. He don't understand that. You know what I mean? It's like, he was picking cotton since he was 8. You know what I mean? So his whole mentality is like, just, it's over. Like, you want that? Like, you're done. I write you off. So, and my mom obviously is very different. Well,
let's talk about your mom, because that's the other thing about this memoir that I found so poignant is the epistolary aspects of it. You've got letters from Uzi coming from prison. You've got letters from your father. You've got even a letter from your sister. That's another story we'll get to. But it's your mother who's keeping this diary, and it's her story. If you would talk about that.
Yeah, when I was coming up, so my mom suffered, like, after Uzi got arrested and everything, like I said, my family structure kind of broke down. My mom suffered from mental illness, very suicidal, tried to kill herself numerous times, addicted to prescription drugs, you know. So she was going through her own, you know, like, serious issues, you know. And I didn't really get a chance to talk to her a lot. We didn't have, like, a lot of conversations. So what I did is I would sneak and read her diary. My mom kept a diary, and she wrote about her life, you know. She wrote about what she was doing. She wrote about my dad, me, my brother. She wrote about her childhood.
And let me just interrupt you. All of her entries are to Carol,
Yes, so
which is her slave name.
yeah, exactly.
Her name is now Amina.
So
Go
all
ahead.
my parents, they changed their name to African names, right? Because they didn't want the slave name anymore. But my mom, when she writes in her diary, she always writes it Dear Carol, which is her former name. And, you know, these letters first of all, they were the way that I was able to understand what was going on with her, even just a little bit.
Even though you weren't supposed to be reading
Even though
her
I
diary.
wasn't supposed to be reading it. And it's crazy because, you know, my mom kicked me out the house when I was like 16. And one of the things that kind of led up to that moment was she caught me reading her diary. There was other stuff too going on that I deserved it. But, you know, but she caught me reading her, you know, these diaries. And it was like she felt violated. You know what I mean? And it's so interesting now, though, because when I was writing this memoir, I went to my mom and we were just talking about it, and it was her idea. You should use my journal entries. And so it's crazy, like, how time changes things, and how, you know, she wrote something just for her, to herself. I read it, she caught me, I got in trouble, and then 15 years later, she's telling me, share it with the world.
So would you share a little bit with us?
Yeah, what do you
I do have it.
specifically?
I do.
Yeah.
Here it is.
Okay, cool. Right here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. So like I said, she talks about, and one of the things about, just to kind of give you some context, this story is written in the first person present tense, right? So that means that you're experiencing things as I'm experiencing them, right? It's not me looking back, you know, 15 years later about how my life was. No, this is how my life is. This is what's going on. This is what I see. This is what's happening. This is the realization I just came to. This is who just tried to shoot me. This is, you know, the epiphany that I just had. You're going through all that, and it's kind of a, there's an urgency there, right? A sense of urgency, because you're traveling with this 13, 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old kid through the streets of Philly, and like everything is just happening fast. Now, my mom's journal entries are a break from that. It's a change of pace. She doesn't sound like me. She doesn't talk like me. She doesn't, you know, she's much more. A lot of times when you're in the present tense and you're in the moment, you don't have time to be introspective and reflect. But my mom's journal entries, they give us really some salvation in a lot of ways. And they're naked. I like that word that you used earlier when we were in agreement. There's a sense of bareness to them because they're raw. She talks about very personal issues for women, like her weight and, you know, just things that you wouldn't ever want to talk about. You know what I mean? Like, you'd be embarrassed or you'd be scared to talk about. She is open about all that. Okay. Dear Carol, I spent the night in my car. It was funny sleeping in Fisher Park. I came home in the morning and I see Shaka and he's leaving for work. He doesn't speak and neither do I. I think he is ashamed of me. It is hard for me to acknowledge this, but it is true. He doesn't want to be seen with me. He doesn't say anything, but his actions tell me that. It's true. I am terribly overweight, and I am not the small dancer that he met a long time ago. It is a hell that I seem to have imposed on myself. Why? There are probably many reasons. I resent him for being ashamed, and I draw further away from him. Every house guest and visitor is my responsibility, but our world is a secret. So that's just like a small excerpt from a larger letter. But you just, first of all, you feel the change of pace, you know, from like how I read, right, and how my stuff sounds. And you also hear that kind of bareness that we're talking about, and honesty. brutal honesty.
Well, and she's in sharp contrast to your father's character, who he's Mr. No BS, I'm not going to do this. And she's the one who gets a lawyer to try to help Uzi in Arizona. And she's the one who gets you to an alternative school. And she's a real activist herself, but in a very different way.
Very different approaches, yeah. Very different approaches.
Yeah. So there's one other woman in this book, your sister, Anika, who is also mentally ill. Would you talk a little bit about her?
Yeah, so my sister, her letters, she writes, there's only one letter featured in the book, but she's a really interesting person. I didn't grow up around her. I've only, we saw each other a few times. She's much older than me, but she suffers from schizophrenia. And it's really interesting because her schizophrenia is like, so she's like really dark, right? She's like Wesley Snipes black, right? And, but she does this genealogy. And, we're African American. Like, there's no, I mean, obviously, everyone in the world has something else. But, my dad and my sister's mom, they're black. You know what I mean? And she does this genealogy all the time. And she comes back with the genealogy and she tells me, oh, I did our genealogy. We're related to Henry Dunster, the first president of Harvard. We're related. We're English, Irish, Welsh, Spanish, Gypsy, Flamingo. We're DeSoto. Every race you can possibly think of except black, except African, right? And it's interesting because my dad is like one of the biggest Afrocentrists in the world. So it's like this contrast because my sister is completely not identifying. At the same time, and this is how life is so nuanced, at the same time, my sister has these people who are after her that she believes that are after her. And, one of the things about schizophrenia, it makes me question, like, what is real? What's reality? Even from a young age. I used to wonder, like, because she sees people and hears people. They're called the neighbors, right? And the neighbors say things to her like, we're going to kill you, you black bitch, and all this other stuff. And they're racist, and they want to kill her. And she sees and hears these people, and she tries to tell them that she's mixed, but it doesn't work. They think she's black. And so on the one hand, she acknowledges racism and understands that these people are racist and they're backwards. And she's like, I got to get out of America. The KKK is out. She talks about the KKK is out to get her and the neighbors. At the same time, she doesn't claim to be black. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
And it makes me, at a young age, it made me question, like, well, if you see something that I don't see, shit, maybe I'm the crazy one. Mm-hmm. Maybe we're all messed up. You know what I mean? So it's interesting. Those kinds of things allow you to delve deeper into larger philosophical questions about life and reality and perception. So that's my sister.
Well, and you've got, so there's this mental illness, which I would imagine all of us can find in our lives here and there, okay? But you've also got the sort of what's happening on the street, like this character, Rocksteady, who stays on the corner, who I was crazy about Rocksteady, even though he really isn't a major player, but it's not clear if he's mentally ill or if he's on drugs or if it's both.
So I'll explain a little bit about Rocksteady. No one's ever asked about Rocksteady either. That's crazy. So, and it's fun, it's a funny story. But anyway, so I'll explain to you the corner that we hung out at, right? It's called 10 G's. I walk up to the corner of 10th and Godfrey. We call it 10 G's, where all of Uzi's boys chill. They stand where they always stand, between the liquor store and the corner store, next to the Fern Rock Apartments fence, under the train tracks, and across the street from Rocksteady, this bug nigga who sits on a crate all day with a broken radio, rocking his head back and forth to a beat no one else can hear. My mom calls them the corner boys because they're always out there, posted like guards at a checkpoint. They hug the block, huddled and hustle, eyeing everything and everyone, everywhere, every day. So this is the corner where we used to chill out and congregate. And Rocksteady is this dude who literally, he had this radio and it's not on, no batteries, right? And he just sits there like this the whole day. You may have seen some, because people have told me in other like places like that they've seen someone like that. So he just sits there and every day, all day, this dude, I don't know how he ate, like what he did. Like later on, I found out that there was like he may have been schizophrenic. I don't know. We didn't talk to him. He was just rock steady. He was just going steady rocking, right? And so no music. No, he just the music of the street. But he there was a home like down the street that kind of took care of people with like mental illnesses. And I think that he may like have lived there or something, and just like every morning would go out on the corner and then be there like until night and then go in or whatever. I never really knew his story. I would love to hear his story. But even like years later when I would come back to the neighborhood, like he would still be out there. He's really, I need to find out where this dude is now.
There's another young man named Amir. Would you talk about him?
So Amir was my best friend, growing up. He was really funny. Like he had jokes for days. Like everything to him, like that's how he made sense of the world, was to just make jokes out of everything. So even though he had like a crazy life, like his life is a lot of books and a lot of hardship, he was always positive. He always smiling, like making jokes, cracking jokes, and he was really into like talking about playing the dozens. You know what I'm saying? So your mom's so dumb she thought St. Ives was a church. You know what I'm saying? Your mom is whatever. Like just I got some of them in here. But yeah, he let's see. So yeah, Amir would say things like, "Your mom's so stupid, it took her 5 hours to watch 60 Minutes." You know what I mean? Stuff like that. Like he was just a comedian, and he made light of everything, and so he was really, and he was just a good friend. And he was killed. He was murdered in Philly during a festival called the Greek in Philly, and that's one of the reasons why we call it Killadelphia, Pennsylvania, just because a lot of people, it's the same in D.C. and Chicago and basically all urban places, just a lot of gun violence, and so he was killed senselessly. They weren't even like, it wasn't even him that was supposed, it wasn't the target. And it had a great impact on me, a great impact on like all of us, all our circle. It was like 4 of us, and it just had a big impact. It was one of the things later on that kind of, there's some epiphanies that I come to in the book just about life, about being a young black man in America, and his story and what he went through, and seeing that all unfold is part of the ingredients that went into that epiphany. And just into some of those realizations about what we were doing and what we were engaged in. I talked to some of my other friends, since this book, I've been to college and graduate school and things like that. And so I've left Killadelphia in a sense of, and have been interacting with people from all different walks of life, interacting with, one of my good friends. He's a, white kid from outside of Philadelphia, privileged, life, and we talk about sometimes about how there's certain things that he did. I mean, like there's certain things that his friends did, really the same things that we were doing, but the consequences were so different. Right. As a young black boy, you could do the same thing. Every kid is rebelling. Every kid is experimenting and doing all these things, right? This is what kids do, but the consequences are different. And that's one of the things that we talk about.
And before Amir dies, you're into that life, right? You're selling drugs yourself. You've got a gun. You're with a street gang called UPK?
Yeah, so my brother's crew was called UPK, Uptown Killers. Like all the guys on the corner, they were part of Uptown Killers. That's what my brother explained it to me in the beginning. All the rawest crews in Philly are all 3 letters. You got UPK, Uptown Killers, that's us. You got ABC, Another Bad Creation. You got JBM, Junior Black Mafia. You got HRM, Hit and Run Mob. You got EAM, Erie Ave Mob. All these, it's all 3 letters. If you ain't got 3 letters, then you're whack. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, so I was a part of that. And like, you know, my brother's friends, when my brother left, I looked toward other people for, especially older guys like my brother's age, you know, as brothers, you know what I mean? And they embraced me like a younger brother, but they didn't have the best intentions. So they gave me guns, they gave me all types of stuff. I was basically, by the time I was 14, like, there were no rule. I mean, I didn't have any supervision, you know what I mean? Like, my dad was gone, my mom was in a pill fog coma type situation in a room locked up, you know. And she writes about this too, about how she says, you know, when I take my meds, when I'm on my meds, it's a sign that I'm unavailable. And she says, can I function? Yes. But the point is, I don't want to function. My mom wanted no part of this life. So my mom is gone. Like, I don't have to ask. I could just leave the house whenever I want, come back when I, no rules.
Take her car,
anything. Like, I'm 14, I'm driving around the city. We driving to Delaware. We driving to New York, New Jersey. You know, no license, no permit, nothing. Like, so anyway, so what was the question?
Let me see if I can. No, I was talking.
Maybe just
You're
about
the
that
life.
Yeah,
The life?
I mean, and it was attractive. Like, again, young boys, they got, you know, you got all types of hormones running through your body. You know, it's exciting.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? What am I gonna stay in the house and read a book? Like, stuff to do out here. You know what I mean? Like, there's stuff going on. Like, I want to be a part of it. You know, so a part of it was just the natural energy of a boy. But you had these people like UPK around me who it was a bad influence, obviously, you know what I'm saying? And they were exposing me early on to just all types of stuff, you know what I mean? I describe it very rawly in the book. I'll spare you now, but when you read the book, I mean, there are some moments in there in that journey that are just really raw, like you know, and it, you know, so, you know, we were doing all that at a very young age.
Yes, and the drug use, like I say, you were dealing drugs yourself, but you also
weed.
No,
it's just it is kind of different, but yeah. But I was selling weed. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and and your mother was on lithium.
Yeah.
You described your friends doing, what was it, the cough syrup?
Oh, the Incredible Hulk.
The Incredible
Hulk. The guys who I looked up to when I was younger, they joined a cult, a real cult, and I talk about that in the book. Like, they were waiting for a spaceship to come in the year 2000. Anyway, once they got out of the cult, and these are like young black guys, like, who listen to hip hop. Like, not guys you would you know when you see the cults and you look the documentaries about the people in the cult, you don't really see these kind of dudes. You know what I'm saying? But they were in the cult, and anyway, anyway, they one day they told me, yo, take me to get some breakfast on J Street. Now it was like 6 p.m. Breakfast. And take me to get some breakfast on J Street. Breakfast was pancakes and syrup. So the pancakes were these Xannies that they would do. And Xannies, you know, Xanax, muscle relaxer. So they would take like 2 like really strong Xannies, and they would break them and then put them in syrup, promethazine, which is like, you know, the prescription cough syrup stuff. People are doing it a lot now in hip hop. You probably, you know, people like Lil Wayne made it popular, and Juicy J. A lot of rappers, you know, talk about promethazine now. But this was in the late 90s, and it wasn't popular. It wasn't something that rappers even talked about ever, unless the only rappers that talked about that were from Texas, where it really started. In like Dallas and Houston, that's where, you know, screwed up music, all that. That's where it came from. If you ever hear screw music, it's really slow, super slow, because when you're on syrup, everything is like super slow. And then they did the Xannies, and so it would make them like, and they called it the Incredible Hulk. They would call it breakfast, and they, you know, and so I got introduced to. So they were on the same kinds of, you know, I told you about the one time where they raided my mom's medicine cabinet. I mean, they were similar. One of the things that I realized is that drugs are drugs are drugs. And my mom talks about it too, about how, you know, her first husband was a drug addict. Her brother, my uncle, was, you know, I told you he was on dynamite. And then my mom was on a prescription, but she talks in her journal entries about how it's all the same. Yeah, her shit's legal, but other than that, I mean, it does the same thing ultimately. Like, and what she wanted was escape. And it did it for her, you know? And the same way for any, you know.
Street drugs. You want to escape?
It's escape.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So.
Yes, and that's, so that goes into how you turn things around, which, you know, you did.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, it was, yeah, so like what we've been talking about, like a lot of the struggles and, you know, and you can kind of start to imagine some of the things that I was doing, you know. I got kicked out of schools, you know what I mean? I was just, a lot of what was going on in the family was causing me to rebel, and I was just rebelling anyway and just wilding out. That's why the story is called Buck. Young Buck, Buck Wild, Buck Shots, Buck Town, Slave Buck, Make Buck, Black Buck, Buck Now. You know, Buck is a loaded title. It has so many different meanings. I chose it for all those different meanings. I was going Buck Wild, but one of the things that kind of changed everything, I was in Texas. Me and my friend, Jordan, who was on the run, he came to my house. He had an APB out on him, all points bulletin. He said, yo, they're looking for me. We had a great idea. I was 16, he was 15. He was 16. I said, let's go to Texas. My cousin, Chris, was from Texas. Called him up. He's like 20. He's like, come on down here. He thought it was a great idea too. I think I had my permit. Jordan didn't have anything. So we drove to Texas, Fort Worth, 25 hours straight. Good idea, right? It's funny how, like, just when you're just what you think is a good idea. By the way, I know it's late, but I'm so happy that my coordinator's here, Nina Marie Nunez. She wasn't, she told me she wasn't coming, you know, and she's always so busy, working so hard, so I didn't think she was going to be here, so it's great to see you. But back to the story. My mom has an overdose. She tries to commit suicide in Philly. We're in Texas. So we drive back to Philly. I get to the hospital. My mom is there. We have a long, deep conversation about, like, life, like, about education. You know, one thing, even in all her kind of chaos and fog, she always was like, because I wasn't in school at the time. She's like, you got to go to school. You got to get it. You know, you got to go to school. And at the time, I'm like, Mom, no school will take me because I got kicked out of this school and this school. You know, they won't take me anymore. And she's like, well, if I find a school that will take you, will you go? I mean, she's in the hospital and everything. You know, what am I going to say? Like, you know, of course I'll go. You know what I mean? So I wasn't feeling her idea, but yes, I'll do anything for you, Mom. So she's very resourceful. She found an alternative school that would take me at that point in the year. You know, it was like a random time of the year, you know. And all the schools that I went to, I describe in the book. Some of the schools I went to looked like prisons, straight up. And they were ran like prisons. They were straight up pipelines. Some of the schools I went to looked like warehouses or factories. You know what I mean? One school just looked like shit. That's how I describe it. Like, that was the color. And this school looked like a gingerbread house.
Would you read?
Yeah, I'll read from that. I get up there, and I'm looking at these are the weirdest kids I've ever seen in my life. And I'm like, you say this is an alternative school? Well, I'm not this damn alternative. Send me back to the pub. The regular school. Like, this is crazy. But anyway, this is, you know, some amazing things happen here. And I'll read from what I'll tell you what happened. Stacy tells us to form a circle with our desk. A circle is a reflection of eternity. Stacy's a teacher. Stacy's the English teacher. Circles can't be broken. No beginning, no end, just motion. There's only like a dozen kids in this class. This really short girl walks in late and sits next to me. Now, he's passed away at this point. So I'm saying, if Amir was here, I miss him so much. He'd be like, yo, she's so short, she poses for trophies. Yo, she's so short, she be hang gliding on Doritos. Yo, she's so short, she does pull-ups on Staples. She's so short, she gives head standing up. Stacy sketches circles in the air. If you put a circle on top of each other, stack them up, you get a spiral. Stacy's big eyes search our faces to see if we follow. Spirals are infinite. Pull out something to write on, something to write with. a pen, pencil, bloody fingernail. Everybody inks up. I don't have anything to write with. No paper either. Man, I can't even remember the last time I did schoolwork. Stacy puts a blank page down in front of me, pen on top of it like a paperweight. Okay, class, write. Everyone in the class starts scribbling fast like reporters at a press conference. I just sit there, confused. She makes her way over. Write, she says, hawking over me. Write what? I look around at everyone else writing, lost in their own little worlds. I wonder to myself, what are they writing? Anything you want, she says. Anything I want? I want to make sure I heard that right. Anything. Whatever. I know this trick. She's bullshitting. Teachers always tell you to express yourself. Then when you really do, you get in trouble. So I write, fuck school, and wait for her to flip. She's probably going to lose it, kick me out. Okay, she laughs. Now keep writing. Keep going. Now, that was an important moment for me, the keep going part. You know, if I would have been kicked out of class, which normally used to happen, my life would have been different and easier because I would have gone home and did whatever. I turn the page over. It's blank again. The blank page is the starter pistol that fires and triggers my mind to sprint. What will I write? What will I say? Will I say what I write? Write what I say? Something funny? Something serious? Something about my family? Something about Amir or Ryan? How will I start? Whose story will I tell? My story? Something made up? A story about a boy from Philly, maybe? A lost boy who wants to find himself but doesn't know where to look? Who wants to tell a story but doesn't know where to begin or end? Who searches anyway and discovers something about himself, about the world? I stare at the blank page, an ocean of white alive with possibility. I hear myself take a breath, then exhale, deep like I just rose from underwater. It's like I'm at the free throw line again, foul shots, like the game is on the line again. I remember something my dad told me, shoot to make it. My hand shaking, trembling like it's freezing. Then it hits me, a silence louder than all the music I've ever heard in my life, all the light in the world in one beam before me. I grip the pen and something shoots down my spine, sits me straight up. The pen feels heavy, like it's made of stone. I stare deep into the blank page and see myself. I feel something I've never felt before. Purpose. I don't know what my exact purpose is yet, but I know it has something to do with this pen and this blank page. I am a blank page. Holding the pen this way, snug and firm in my fists, makes me feel like I can write my future, spell out my destiny in sharp strokes.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
I'd like to open this up now for Q&A. If any of you have any questions for Mr. Asante, there's a microphone over here, and
Hi.
Hey.
You really lived a culturally significant life, and I'm just wondering where the idea for the book started. And I had that question, and then when you just read what you did that day, I'm just wondering, did it start there? And how did it evolve? How did you,
That's great.
process?
I didn't write anything that day. That day, I had what they call writer's block. My pen was in ice. So I felt alive in a way, but at the same time, I felt completely incapable of writing anything. I didn't know where to start, how I was going to. So I didn't write anything that day, but I did, start to take a liking to this class. And I eventually did write. One of the things I wrote when I first started writing was actually the first line of the book, The Fall in Killadelphia. So it's interesting how things all come back around. But, when you write a memoir, you need some distance, at least for me. It took me a while to have the distance from this book kind of ends when I'm about 18. I graduate from high school. It ends in a really positive way. But there was so much pain there. This book in a lot of ways is about some of the most difficult times in my life. So I couldn't even think about writing this just a few years after. It took a lot of distance. initially, after I had kind of been through a lot of this, I was ashamed of it, you know? It was like, I don't want to talk about that. I'm ashamed of that, you know. My family's not perfect. I'm ashamed of that, you know what I mean? And so it took me a lot of time to realize that we're all, no one's perfect, no one has a perfect family, and that your vulnerability isn't actually weakness, but it's actually your strength. And so it took me time to realize that, you know, the struggles that we went through made us stronger. Without struggle, there's no progress. That's what Douglas says. So it took me a while to realize that. I think the other thing that kind of influenced me writing a book is, you know, I started traveling. I love traveling. Been to over 40 countries now. And no matter where I went, I would tell stories about my life and childhood that people thought were like, first of all, when you're going through things, you think it's normal. Like the cult thing and all that stuff. Like I thought that was like a nationwide, like I thought a lot of people were into that. You know what I'm saying? So it's not until later on when you run into people and they're like, really? Like what? Like tell me more. And I'm like, oh, you know, like, yeah, like the space shit, like, you know, and you start to realize like, damn, like I've got a really unique story and interest. Like this shit doesn't happen every day. Like, so, and everybody's story is unique, obviously, but you just start to realize that, wow, there's so much jewels, right? There's so much education in my experience. And that's when I even just started to think about, and this is the other thing. For all the writers in here, you have an idea in your mind, right? That scares the shit out of you. I mean, literally, every time you think about it, you're like, damn, I can't even, you know what I'm saying? See, I knew it. Like, because you know that for whatever reason, it could be for multiple reasons why it might scare you. You're fearful of going there because you know if you go, that's, you know, it just opens up things or whatever. So it's something that you think about, but I can't do, you know, I can't, no, I'm not, I don't have the, whatever you don't think you have, right? And so you kind of run from that, but that's where you need to run toward. That's the story. That's where the juice is. That's where the energy is. That's where the life is. In that thing that makes you scared. When you think about it, you're like, no, like that's, so in a lot of ways, this was that. This was the story that, man, if I write a memoir, this shit would be great. Like, I can't, you know, and so, but then that's also what attracted me so much. I couldn't not think about it anymore. And to me, projects grow on me. Like, it'll start out like a little seed, and it'll grow and grow and grow until the point where, like, I'm always thinking about it. And I'm just realizing, like, you know, people talk about writing what you know. And this is something that I had to get out. Like, I had to share. And I also knew that, you know, young people were seeing me, you know, young kids that were, I say in the beginning of the book, like to all the young bucks, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is who the book is dedicated to. Like, they're seeing me now, like, you know, as a tenured professor, you know, at 25, you know, writing books, making films, doing music, all this stuff. And they're not seeing the struggle. They're not understanding that there was a point in my life where I was completely lost and didn't have anything figured out and didn't know, and that there were, like, and I thought it was important to share the vulnerability and the struggles because I think it gives you hope and inspiration and courage and the realization that, like, we all go through things, but it doesn't, you're not reduced to that. You know what I mean? And so I felt like it would be encouraging, you know, in a lot of ways too, to share. But really I had to write it because it was like I had been running from it. And I got to a point where I couldn't run from it anymore. It was like right there, and it was like, okay, it's time to tell this story, you know? And I'm glad I did.
Other questions?
I wonder what kind of advice you have for people who want to write a story, but they are worried that it would cause too much pain for their family. And you mentioned your uncle responding today. Did you take into consideration how it would strike other people and maybe leave out things you wanted to include, or did you talk to them about how you were going to cover things that might affect them? And
well, that's a great question. Were you done?
yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry to cut you off, but that's a great question because it's something that if you're going to write a memoir, you do need to be aware of. I'll tell you what I did. First of all, the way I work, my editor didn't even see anything until I was done. Like, I don't just share like in works in progress or, you know, and I don't talk about what I'm doing with people as I'm doing it. That's something I learned a while ago because sometimes people can kind of kill your energy. You know what I mean? You might be having an idea, you don't have it all worked out yet, and you come to someone with the idea, and then they kind of kill it, they shoot it down because your idea is not finished yet. But then it kind of influences you and where you're going and kills your whole drive. And so I just learned I don't say shit till it's done. You know what I mean? And then I just say here. And so no one read it or saw anything while I was working on it, not even my editor. And he was asking me all the time, like, you know, when can I see something? I'm like, just wait. I'm like, trust me, it's going to be worth it. It's going to be worth it. Now, the thing about family, in my opinion, you can't think about, if you're going to write an honest memoir, you cannot be thinking about how this person's going to react, how this person's going to react. Because if you do, you're going to write, it's not going to be worth reading to me because it's not honest. You know what I mean? If you're concerned about, oh, this person might get their feelings hurt, or you're telling your truth in your story, your memory, your memoir, your journey. And when you're concerned about how other people go, then you're not really writing that anymore. You're really writing something that you're trying to appease people and make people. So to me, I didn't like ask people, or like I had a conversation with my mom about the journal entry, but I wasn't interested in like making people look good or bad. I wanted to just tell my story, and I felt like that was the only way to write something worthy. You know, in terms of literature, is to be completely raw, honest, and not concerned about feelings. Really, it sounds kind of cold, but that's how it was. You know, if I was concerned about feelings, then this would have never been. I mean, that's not how it works. Because you would be so concerned about every little thing. You have to be totally free when you write. Now, once you finish it, maybe you decide, I'm not going to publish this. But when you're writing it, I feel like you have to be completely free. If you're very concerned about it, my advice is just call it a novel. Change everybody's name, call it a novel. You know, simple little solution. But for me personally, that wouldn't have worked because of what I was telling you about in terms of me wanting to inspire people, you know, and be an example. So the fact that this really happened to me, what is important, and is an important part of the journey in my story. But yeah, I mean, people do that. They just call it a. In fact, there was a woman I just heard about. My agent told me about. She got a big book deal. I don't know if you guys heard about this. She wanted to write this story for so long about her ex-husband or something, family. She got the big book deal, wrote the book, and then she was like, I can't publish this. And so she gave back the advance and didn't publish the book. And they were saying, you know, you can just, you know, they wouldn't do it as a novel. First she tried to say, can we just do it as a novel? And they said, no, it has to be a memoir. And so she couldn't do it. So it's very, look, you know, if you're going to write a story about your life, there's going to be lots of, you know, I was telling you earlier, we're all at this event today, right? Now, if I ask you all tomorrow to tell me about this event, you're all going to have different like observations. You're going to remember things he doesn't remember, and vice versa. If I ask you to do this same thing 10 years from now, yo, what was that event that when you, then it would be even more diverse and ranging and crazy in terms of the things that you guys remember. So one thing to understand going into it is when you write a memoir, even the people that were there are not going to have the same memory. We remember things different. And that's kind of speaks to the nature of memory. And there's things that we do for survival in terms of how we remember things as well. And I learned about that as well. My grandma has a thing where she just forgets things. Like it's really a survival mechanism, but she doesn't remember. Like if something traumatic or bad, she just doesn't remember. Like, but grandma, you don't nope. It never happened. So everyone has a different, so memory is really interesting, and you learn about that when you start writing a memoir. But to me, those conversations should happen after you write the book, because if they happen before, you'll never write the book. There's too many cooks in the, you know, whatever they call that. Kitchen.
Along those lines, you mentioned that your father went away or was absent or something. Is he alive? Does he know about the book? Have you engaged with him? Do you have atonement with him?
Yeah. Oh, and that's one of the, I mean, this book, that's a great question. This book is about relationships. It's about family. It's about finding your voice, passion, all those things. But relationships, mother and son, brother and brother, and father and son. Me and my dad had a very tumultuous relationship during these years. But this is what happened. This is like the turning point of our relationship. I got arrested. Actually, when I took them to go get breakfast on J Street, coming home from that, Scoop, who you guys haven't been introduced to yet, stabbed Ted in my car. Ted was in the passenger seat. Stabbed him. And so, crazy story, I ended up going to jail for that, not being charged or anything, but spending a weekend in jail. It was a very crazy situation. You'll read about it. I called my cousin to get me out. My mom wasn't available. My cousin couldn't do it. She was at school in Albright, and so she called my dad. And I hadn't seen my dad in a while at this point. We weren't talking. I was totally resented him because I felt like he left at a time where we needed him most. You know what I mean? Like, he left my mom, and he left me in that sense because he left the house. And my mom had a lot of issues. So it's like, now I'm young and I got to deal with all of this, you know what I mean, with my mom. And like, I ain't signed up for this, man. Like, you know, I was really upset about that. So my dad comes to get me from jail, and he's pissed at me for being there, for being rebellious, for being, you know, and we're both pissed at each other. Now, we're driving down the street. Anybody been to Philly? Been to Broad Street? Broad Street's the biggest street in Philly. Huge, big, urban street. We're driving Broad Street, and he looks over at me. He says, "You want to fight?" And I said, "Yeah, actually, I do." He pulls the car over on Broad Street right in front of Checkers. We get out the car. He puts his stuff, and we just start going at it, you know? And it's surreal. Like, me and my dad, like, my dad, he's an intellectual. He's an activist. Like, he's not really street like that. Like, you wouldn't picture him fighting, and he wears dashikis every day. So we're wrestling, and the guy, you know, I'm in the dashiki, pulling the dashiki. Anyway, it ends with my dad on top of me on the car, and he's like pressing the words into me, like, "I love you, boy. I love you, boy. Like, don't you understand that, boy? I love you." Like, really pressing them into me. And I had been in jail for the weekend, and so I smelled Dwight's across the street. Dwight's is like the best soul food in Philly. And I was like, "Can we get some food?" And like, so we went to Dwight's, and over yams, macaroni and cheese, greens, chicken, all that stuff, we just talked for the first time in my life as men, man to man. You know what I mean? I'm like 17 now, so we're like man to man. And he explained a lot to me, his perspective, but it didn't really matter at that point. I felt whole again, just being around him. You know, I always had so much love for him and respect for him. So even when I was disrespecting him and rebelling against him, it was really because I just needed him and wanted him, you know, and didn't know how to express it. So that was the beginning of our new relationship, a whole new paradigm. And we have a great relationship now, you know what I mean? That was one of the things that's difficult about a memoir. You know, a memoir, you write about a slice of your life, and your life could have changed from that. So even though I'm writing about a time when me and my dad were like this, our relationship now is good. So it's kind of hard sometimes but I had to put myself back in that place to be able to write it authentically. But yeah, so we're good now. He kind of has the same, we were talking about this, he kind of has the same view that we were talking about, you know, different memory. Obviously, he's going to read my mom's journal and have a different memory. You know what I'm saying? And so we all have, and but he respects the right of the writer and the artist to tell their story. He believes that that's an essential right for people to be able to tell their story. So he's been supportive of it.
And we're going to end on that note.
Oh man, he's really. Look at his face. Can we just
one
real
more?
Quick,
okay,
real
one
quick.
more. And if Diana will.
Anyhow, you talk about memory, and you also mentioned Frederick Douglass a little earlier. I'm a huge fan, and he had several memoirs that he did throughout his life, which I thought was amazing because he was able to the memories didn't last long. You know, most people wait until they're old or whatever, and so what is neat about Douglas is, have you read them? You know,
Yeah.
So they're different because his memories are different. You know what I mean? So do you see yourself doing more memoirs? Have you thought about that?
I have thought about it. I might call it a novel next time. Because, you know, people read it like, oh, man, yo, how come you didn't put this in? Or, yo, why you make me look like, you know, it's like, look, man, you know what I mean? But no, I definitely have thought about it. I probably will write more because this story, honestly, is still unfolding. Everybody who you're going to meet in this book, their journey is still going. You know what I mean? And it's deep. You know, my brother, my mom, my pop, my friends, you know. So I've thought about it. Even my travels throughout, throughout Africa, throughout Europe, you know, buck in the world and engaging in the world, and you know, I've thought about it. But right now, I'm not working on anything like that. No. I didn't write the end. Just, you know, to be continued.
There you go. Thank you so much.
Thank you, both of you.
Yeah, thank you.
But the evening doesn't have to end. Mr. Asante will be signing his book. Just across the hall, we have books for sale. So please, they make a fabulous gift for just about everyone. That was one of the most enjoyable evenings I think we've ever spent here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you, all of you. If you have any other questions and you don't get a chance to talk to me tonight, hit me up on Twitter at MK Asante or Facebook Asante MK, Instagram MK Asante, mkasante.com, all of that. I'm out there in that internet.
All right. Wonderful.
All right. Thank you so much.